I'd like to take just a moment of silence for the people who have died in the flooding in Texas, if we could, please. So it's traditional in my tradition of Zen to also acknowledge the Chumash, and we've already done so, but I thought I would just add that they first settled here at least 13,000 years ago, and that they lived on the coast all the way from Malibu up to Paso Robles. And there were something like 150 independent villages and towns with 25,000 people, and one of them was right here in Avila, of course. And I think probably you all know that already, but still, it's good to remember. So I want to talk tonight about a Zen teacher called Dong Shan. He's also, his Japanese name is Tozan, and I went through a ceremony it's been a year ago, October? I guess it's already been a year and a half or something. It's been a long time. What we do for the ceremony is we pick out a koan, and then we study that koan. And we also study the people in the koan. So one of the main people in the koan was Dong Shan, or Tozan. And there were so many incredible stories about him that I became really fascinated by him, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about him. And the other person in this story that I'm going to tell you tonight is Yunyan, or also Ungan in Japanese, who was his teacher. And Dong Shan is the founder of the Saodong School, it was a Saodong school in China, and when it moved to Japan, it became the Soto School. So it is the school that we, as part of the Zen Center of Los Angeles, and also the Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, are part of that Soto lineage. And so he was the founder. Some people say he's one of the founders. There's some controversy about it, whether he's the only founder or not. And also, for any of you who have practiced at any Zen Center, particularly a Soto Zen Center, he wrote the Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, which is usually chanted in morning service. So some of you, I think at San Francisco they call it, they call it the Jewel Mirror Samadhi as well, sorry. So you probably chanted this as well. So Dong Shan said to Yunyan, "I have some habits that have not yet been eradicated." Yunyan said, "What have you been doing?" I always think, I wonder what he thought he was talking about. He says, "What have you been doing?" And Dong Shan replied, "I have not concerned myself with the Four Noble Truths." Yunyan said, "Are you joyful yet?" Dong Shan said, "It would be untrue to say that I am not joyful. It is as though I have grasped a bright pearl in a pile of shit." So now you can see that the title of this talk is not from me. It's actually from Dong Shan. It is as though I have grasped a bright pearl in a pile of shit. And some of you may feel that. You may feel like that. You may feel like that way about the present state of the world, which, as my grandmother used to say, feels like it's going to hell in a handbasket, right? Anybody else know that one? Yeah, great old saying. You may feel that way about your own life and about our own efforts to practice the Buddha way. We practice Buddhism, and practice has introduced us to a place and a possibility that is serene, open, and joyful. But still, the world seems pretty messed up in many, many ways, and may seem to us to be becoming more messed up every day. Though we apply ourselves to this practice, our own lives are still filled with obstacles and difficulties. And we ourselves still have vexations, habits, and emotions that seem to get in the way of fully settling on and expressing the insight, serenity, and freedom that we feel from practice. This insight, serenity, and freedom, and in fact practice itself, is the bright pearl that Dong Shan talks about grasping. And all of the other stuff, the problems of the world, the wars, poverty, starvation, prejudice, power, cruelty, and obstacles and difficulties, both our lives' obstacles and difficulties and our own personal vexations, habits, and emotions, are the pile of shit. So we too may feel that we are grasping a bright pearl in the midst of a pile of shit. It seems echoey or something.
It's just a little high.
Yeah, it's kind of bothering me that I hear the echo. Thank you. I was telling Susan that when I used to teach, because that's what my profession was teaching, first I used to apologize when I swore. And then I realized my students, the more I swore, the more my students liked it. So, I stopped apologizing. So we're going to hear a lot of shit tonight. So it's just the way it is. So at the time of this story, Dong Shan is already an awakened person. He's already been recognized by his teacher and received transmission. When he says, I have some habits that are not yet eradicated, it is these sorts of personal vexations and emotions, plus the trials and tribulations of life, that he's speaking of. So we are in much the same situation as Dong Shan, with persistent habits and vexations that seem to us anyway to get in the way of truly awakening. When Dong Shan says he has these habits that have not yet been eradicated, Yunyan asks him, what have you been doing? And Dong Shan answers, I have not concerned myself with the Four Noble Truths. So what does he mean by this? Of course, you all know what the Four Noble Truths are. The truth that there is suffering is part of life. That suffering is caused by craving and attachment. That it is possible to end suffering. And that there is a path toward ending suffering. So it sounds like Dong Shan is saying, I haven't been paying enough attention to the basics. I've been all caught up in my own life, my own emotions and vexations, in the problems of my own life and those of the world. I've been forgetting that there is an underlying cause of all this. I've been forgetting to focus on this path to end suffering. Wow, I don't know about you guys, but I recognize that. I forget all the time, and I get really caught up in all those little things that bother me. Not to mention the problems of the world. I have enough in my own life, Sometimes wish the world would get it together so I could concentrate on the problems in my own life. I don't have to worry about that. So no matter how long we practice, we find ourselves losing the path and having to remember to step back onto it. To remember the Four Noble Truths. To remember that suffering is a part of human life, that these troubles we are experiencing are not unique to us, but are a part of the human condition. We have to remember that we know how to stop suffering. We have to remember to drop our craving and our attachments, to drop our personal narrative, which tells us that this thing is bad, or this thing is unfair, or whatever it is that we tell ourselves. We have to remember that all of this is our life, our human life, our wonderful, inconceivable human life. That it's all part of the same incredible experience. And this is practice. This is why we call it practice, because we have to keep doing it. Darn, isn't that too bad? too bad we can't just get to a point and that's it. But we have to renew it over and over again. We practice dropping our cravings and attachments over and over and over. And they keep popping up, and we do it again. We renew our practice on each moment in each situation, and hopefully we become better at it. We drop it a little bit sooner, and our habit of dropping it becomes stronger maybe over time, and maybe it becomes stronger than our habit of holding on to it over time. It takes, we just have to keep doing it. So we continue doing this as this is the path. So today, I am troubled by some difficulties in my own life, some personal health issues, some family difficulties, some interpersonal challenges, some habits that I have that keep getting in my way of relating to people. There's lots of things that I'm troubled by. Anybody else in here have any of these things? I know, I'm always afraid they're going to say, no, I don't know. You're just weird. Certainly, these are a fairly constant part of our lives. But I'm also troubled by the state of our nation, the growing wealth disparity, the increasing abandonment of concern for social welfare and social equality, the erosion of values and of standards of social behavior, and a seemingly increasing list of developments and changes that are concerning. And many of these are not just national problems, but they're global. The continuous wars, the extensive poverty, starvation, racial prejudice and disparity, erosion or non-existence of civil rights, ecological disasters, which we're seeing an example of in Texas. It's just one big pile of shit, isn't it? It's easy to think that these are just particularly terrible times. But in reality, most of these problems have existed throughout recorded history. They're nothing new. From the beginning of recorded history, what we call civilization, the human story is one about one powerful group of people dominating or eradicating other less powerful groups. During prehistoric times, when we humans lived in tribes, our human tendencies of greed and hatred and delusion weren't such a big deal. I'm sure they were still a big deal, but they couldn't get out of hand as easily. Because if you live in a group of 20 or 50 people, if Susan suddenly starts bossing us all around, we're just gonna, put her in her place, right? We're not gonna let her get out of place. She wouldn't do that. So, when you live in a smaller group, the problem's not as bad. But as we settled down into villages and towns and cities, things changed. As early civilizations developed, more powerful groups began to dominate and control weaker ones, creating very large populations and very diverse populations. In order to feed and organize these large populations, bureaucracies became necessary. Class systems developed, usually including a large slave class to do the labor. Organized armies were created. Spirituality developed into organized religions, and both the armies and the religions were used as a tool for dominance and control. Great difficulties in class and wealth became a part of the human condition, just as they are today. Over 5,000 years ago, we have the first visual and written records of wars in Mesopotamia, in the city-states, and in the unification of Egypt. Those are the first written records we have But probably it goes way back beyond that. But that's 5,000 years ago, and we haven't learned. We haven't learned anything. We're still doing it. These wars and many others were fought not just for defense, but for expansion of territory, political legitimacy, and religious primacy. As long as 3,000 years ago, we have a record of Ashurnasirpal in Mesopotamia, who committed mass slaughter of entire cities in his quest for power. And he relocated an estimated 4 million people, either for punishment, because they rebelled, or to break up resistance, or to create forced labor in other areas. This was nearly 4% of the entire world's population at that time. So our immigration and migration problems almost seem small compared to that. But this has been part, as I say, of the human condition. In 1300, in our current era, what is called the Little Ice Age began, and there were massive crop failures and widespread famine throughout Europe. Not one of the first ecological disasters, but certainly one of the first in what we call Western civilization, recorded Western civilization. This led to malnourishment, weakened immune systems, increased migration to towns and cities, which created overcrowding and disruptions in trade, which left Europe ripe for the plague, which devastated Europe. As you all know this, you all know your history, that somewhere between 30 to 60% of the entire population of Europe died. So when we worry about ecological disasters, it's a good thing that we're worrying, because these things really happen and they really can devastate our civilizations. Our concerns over war, political struggles and abuses, migration and immigration, ecological disasters, starvation, pandemics, etc., are nothing new. Our modern day problems are not new, but are rather ongoing characteristics of human nature, and particularly human civilization. Our human tendencies toward craving, attachment, lust, envy, hatred, revenge, etc., are multiplied by the size of our civilizations, and today by the globalizations of human influence. Really, they are the reflection of our own selves. They are not other. They are not just the problems of this point in time and space, but are the problems of the human condition. Our world problems are our own human nature writ large. They're the same things that we're struggling with in our own life, in our own interpersonal relationships. They are our very selves. So recently I've been reading a book, and I apologize to, I think there's only 2 people here that were at my last talk, because they're going to hear some of the same stuff. But that book is by Dr. Keltner. It's called Awe, the New Science of Everyday Wonder. Anybody in here read it? Oh gosh, I bet that's my phone.
What is it called?
It's not going to shut off.
It's a timer.
Yeah, it's a timer because I have to sign up for my swim lane. It goes off every night. And I usually don't bring my phone, but I brought it because somebody else gave me a ride. So
Stop so you can sign up.
she got it. She turned it off. Thank you. No, I don't go on Sundays. It's no problem. You got to sign up on the 2nd, Anybody do that? It's like you got to sign up on the 2nd. So anyway, it's caused me so much trouble. I'm thinking I need to take it off. Anyway, so Dr. Keltner is a professor of psychology at UC Berkeley, and he's an expert on the science of human emotion, and he began studying. There was a period of time in recent history where they first really started studying, thinking they could scientifically study emotion. And mostly they studied things like anger and anxiety and things like that. And he realized that no one was studying the positive emotions. So he became very interested in the positive emotions, and he specializes in compassion and awe. So he defines awe as the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our current understanding of the world. It's about our relationship to the vast mysteries of this life and of our existence. There are many experiences that can create a sense of awe, including music, visual design and art, nature, moral beauty, collective effervescence, which he defines that as when you get together in a group and you feel it feels larger than, it feels like a larger self, you know, like at a rock concert or a religious festival or something like that. Experiences of life and death, spirituality and religion, and epiphanies of all kinds. Keltner's research shows that these are not rare, that on average, a person experiences awe 2 to 3 times per week. Awe does not have to be something huge or stupendous. It's simply seeing the ordinary in a new way. We experience awe by finding or seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. Suzuki Roshi says, the most important thing is to find out what is the most important thing. And the most important thing is to find the most important thing in the most ordinary thing. So awe is defined by certain characteristics. It seems ineffable beyond words. It orients us to things outside our individual selves. It's boundary dissolving. It gives us a sense of being part of something larger than ourselves, a sense that our true nature is collective and interconnected. It creates a sense of a small self in relation with the rest of our existence. Scientifically, activity in the regions of the brain responsible for self-criticism, anxiety, and depression quiet down when we experience awe. And I know a lot of you know what the default mode is. So the default mode is that voice that's always narrating our lives and telling us how people see us and whether we look good or didn't look good or relives the last moment, and that voice that just kind of carries on all the time, the default mode. So it's responsible for the ongoing internal narration and kind of the eye-making in our brains. And so when we experience awe, there is increased connectivity between the areas of the brain connected to that and areas connected with a sense of reward. In other words, our ongoing narrative becomes more positive when we experience awe. We feel better about things, about ourselves. And finally, awe empowers sacrifice and inspires us to give. And Keltner lists meditation as one of the things that produces awe. It sounds like Buddhism, doesn't it? Smaller self, more generosity, interconnectedness, all those things that we think of as Buddhism. So in those moments of awe, we drop our cravings and attachments. We drop our narratives. Our I becomes small. We are connected, interconnected to the vastness of our experience, the vast, inconceivable nature of existence, and we tend to feel more compassionate and generous. So recently, I'm going to bore you guys again. It was a couple of weeks ago. I went out to sit in my garden out front, and I have a little bench out there. And when I went out to sit there, I almost didn't sit down because there was a little young lizard sitting there in the middle of the bench, and I didn't want to scare him. But I thought, well, I'm just going to quietly try to sit down. And I sat down, and he was only like this far away from me. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at the garden, and I looked at the garden, and we sat there, right? And it was wonderful. It was small. It's a little thing. It's no big deal. But it was wonderful. And for that moment, I was completely connected, to the garden, to the lizard, to, the sounds, the birds, the air, I was there. you know? And definitely I have to say that practice has made me more open to noticing those things. It's definitely helped me to do that. So I've been noticing that I'm more likely to experience moments of awe if I'm quiet, if I'm not busy, either physically or mentally, when I allow space around myself and around my activities, space for the world to come in. And certainly, all of this happens in our meditation practice. So meditation is one of the ways that we do this. But our practice is also to carry that quiet, that lack of busyness, that space to let the world come in into our lives, not just on the cushion, but into our lives as we live it. When we do that, we find our life, find our awakening in the ordinary, and we connect to the ineffable vastness of being, of that of which we are a part. So when Yunyan asked Dong Shan, "Are you joyous yet?" You know, it kind of cracks me up in this story because he goes to his teacher with this big problem, you know, that I can't get rid of these things that I'm attached to, or whatever he says. I forget what they are exactly. And you know, his teacher just kind of ignores that and just says, "Are you joyous yet?" You know, and when he says that, and Dongshan answers, "It would be untrue to say that I am not joyous. It is as though I've grasped a bright pearl in a pile of shit." Yunyan is pointing to this awe, to this joy, which is also there, right in the midst of all those habits that have not yet been eradicated. They're both there. We have both of them. And, you know, for me, it's like, how do I carry both of those at the same time? You know, how do I hold them close, both of them? So how do we handle our problems, or the problems of the world? We face our own humanity, our own greed, hatred, and delusion. You know, sometimes we point fingers. I mean, there's one person in our political sphere that we feel like is very greedy and not very compassionate. I will not mention the name. But, you know, that's us, too. When are we greedy and not compassionate? And so I think that we have to face ourselves first. And we realize that we are not different from or separate from the problems in our life, or the problems in our nation, or the problems in the world. This is the nature of being human. These problems are continuous in the human experience, and we always connect to the incredible joy of being, the incredible joy of this vast, beautiful existence. So does this mean that we do nothing? No. We act, but we act from a place of serenity and wisdom, spaciousness and interconnectedness. We act from that which we've learned from practice, from that place. We've cultivated it through our practice, through our finding of the extraordinary in the ordinary, and through our understanding of our own humanity. As the Chan teacher Guo Gu says, we face our problems, our vexations, we embrace them, we act on them, and then, or we respond to them, I think he says, not act on them, we respond to them, and then we let them go. We don't hold on to them. So this is not about passively accepting the world as it is. This is about acting from the depths of practice, the depths of awakening. If we widen our view to include everything as ourself, we can act from true compassion. We, like Dong Shan, must hold both the pearl and the shit, both the joy and the vexations. We are not separate, we are not exclusive. They are not exclusive of each other. I should have said they are not separate. The bright pearl includes the shit. The shit includes the bright pearl. What a statement, huh? This is the nature of our human existence. Vast, clear, calm, yet rippled by or sometimes mired in troubles and vexations, existing with purity like a lotus in muddy water. This is the true nature of our practice. All one bright pearl, all one big pile of shit. Isn't this just this as it is? Isn't this enough? Isn't this wonderful? Isn't this joyful? Okay, so I'm hoping people have some comments or questions, things they would like to say. Or you can tell me I'm full of shit. Or
I think the talk was very shitty, I must say.
What'd you say?
The talk was very shitty.
Very shitty, yeah.
No, but it was also a beautiful pearl. Just a quick question. Can we say that the pearl and the shit are nirvana and samsara? I mean, are they equated like that or put together like that?
I think they sort of are, but in Zen, they're kind of so intertwined.
Yeah, okay.
You know, that just even separating them is like too much.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah,
In
so
some way, but yes, I
they're,
think so.
they're essentially the same,
Yes,
just a
they
matter
are
of a
the
different
same.
perspective.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that Zen had that idea. I was just wondering about that.
Did they have what?
I didn't know that in Zen it was like that.
Yeah.
Once I was talking with Reb Anderson, and I mentioned something about samsara and nirvana being really just the same, two sides of the same. And he said, no, that's not right. So I didn't know how.
You know what, teachers will say one thing one time and another
Right,
thing another time.
right, yeah.
I don't know anybody like that in here, but there are some teachers who do that, you know.
Thank you. Thanks for the wonderful talk.
Because it's both true and not true. I mean, you can't say anything and absolutely be correct, you know, about Buddhism, because it's all beyond words, really, yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. I love the title and I love the talk. And I had an experience of it this morning. My husband and I were out walking along the ocean, Bob Jones Trail, and between the two piers. And we ran into June Kramer, actually. She was out walking too. And she said, "Hi, Sharon, how are you?" And I said, "I'm great." And she kind of looked at me and I said, "Well, I'm great as long as I stay in my little bubble here. As soon as I think about the rest of the world, I'm not so great." And we talked about that, that both and.
Yeah. That
we do live in a privileged bubble where things are pretty damn good. And so, what I've been playing with is how do I, really purposely and consciously use that privilege of my life to extend to others and lend that hand. Yeah. And I think that that's what we're really called to do as Buddhists, out of compassion.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of getting down into the shit in order to lift other people out.
And I know you've been very involved in the social justice end of Buddhism and activity and such. I think, I struggle with this too, because in a way I'm not doing anything like that. But I also really strongly feel that just practicing and sharing that practice is a lot. Thank God we have, thank Buddha maybe, that we have practice in this life, that people who are thinking like this, that compassion might be more important than wealth, for example. Thank God we have that. And so I think I think both are true. And sometimes, some people are maybe only capable, or what they do is maybe they can be nice to the grocery clerk when they check out, and that can make that person's day. And somebody else, can make some big social contribution, but I think it's all really important.
All life is a continuum, isn't it?
Yeah. And I know I feel like, I feel like I did a lot of contribution when I was teaching. I made a big difference in some people's lives. Now that I'm retired, I don't do so much of that. So, and I'm sure people do it in various ways.
Thank you. I'm Susa. I'm new here tonight.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Another story that maybe you know came to my mind when I heard the shit and the pearl. That's a story from a Buddhist storybook. Somebody puts a pile of manure in front of the door, and nobody takes it away. And the person, me or us, has to take the manure away and works day after day to put it away, and puts it in another place behind the house so they can even enter the house without the smell and everything. And then one day it becomes a beautiful flower garden. And that reminded me of this world and all the challenges we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we as human beings are very complex in that way, that we are both wonderful and also one of the most dangerous animals on the planet, that we're both in some way.
Yes, and it's this idea, somebody put this pile of manure in front of my door.
Yeah.
And this person is not going to take it away. So I have to deal with
Yeah,
it.
so we have to deal with it ourselves, that's right.
Yes.
Well, I think we sometimes are putting our own manure in front of our own door. Yeah.
Or in front of somebody else's door. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I have a microphone. Thank you so much. That was, I especially, when you got to the part where we're talking about all the, horror and greed and cruelty and, power grabbing and everything that's happened over history. And then you said, well, it's the same thing. We have it, inside. And that, it just really resonated with me, because sometimes, we start thinking, boy, I'm so good and I'm so right. And it's those people that are, and it's all there. And sort of seeing that in yourself, I think is really, really useful. So I just appreciated that, and I'm gonna kind of bring that to mind when I'm thinking about those other people that are doing bad things. I'm gonna kind of bring that.
I think we really have to widen ourselves to realize that they are us in some way.
They are us.
Yeah, that we're not so different, that we may think we're so great, but then somebody cuts us off on the freeway and we want to get back at them. We may not do it, but we want to get back at them. We're just like that,
To notice that inside, like Thich Nhat Hanh saying, call me by my true name. And that realization that that's all of us. It's all there.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is that we can't wait until we get rid of all that stuff to practice or to be awakened or whatever, it is. We have to do it at the same time. We have to hold them both. We just have to, it's not going to go away. It's human, So it was interesting. One of the things in that Dr. Keltner book is that he said one of the interesting things was that people who had more wealth were less likely to experience awe. I was really amazed at that kind of.
Yeah. Are there any questions?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I have something. Hello, I'm Stacy. I just got an email today, and it was celebrating the Dalai Lama's birthday coming up. And then I scrolled down, it was going to be designated a year of compassion from July 25 to July 26. And I think that that's all part of the whole, well, what's happening. It's nice to hear that there's that many people that are going to put in that much time on compassion this year. So I thought it was very timely myself.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you.
Hand up.
Hi, 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 Deborah. I just want to thank you. I always love your talks.
Thank you.
And since you mentioned the Four Noble Truths, I will also say there are still a couple of places for the class on the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path that starts this coming Saturday. So if people are still interested, they can email me because it is the basis of what we're doing.
Yeah, we can all stand to pay more attention, for sure.
Thank you.
Deborah, that was a wonderful talk.
Thank you.
And here, can you hear me? Okay. I always love when neuroscience comes into Buddhism, and like Dr. Keltner, and I find that really, what's the word? So I believe in Buddhism, but I like the science of it as well. And just knowing that when you're kind and compassionate, it just reverberates to other people, and then they'll be compassionate. And that's, I think that's an important thing that we do, like you say, at the grocery store and smile to the checker.
Right.
Yeah, so there's little things and then there's really big things.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I picked up that book because I was feeling overwhelmed by things in my own life, and I just felt like I needed something positive. And I was also feeling like, wow, Buddhism or Zen, talk so much about, it's like sit, practice really hard, get out of suffering, and I was like, wait, what about the positive? Yeah. What about that, So I was really happy when I got this book that it was so appropriate to what I was looking for. And then when I read it, I thought, wow, this is just like Buddha. This is Buddhism, Buddhism 101. This is what happens when you take that backward step into being quiet, into our, amazing. Yeah, it's a little bit longer than I said, but it's the science of, I'm not going to be able to find it. Let me see. I have too many pages here. Yeah, here it is. The new science of everyday wonder. And then it goes on to say, and how it can help your life or something. And I never repeat that part because it sounds too much like pop psychology. So I just, I just leave that part out,
I've been to several protests, and to me it's awe and joy.
Yeah, I think we do when we're in those protests feel like we're one big, what does he call that? Where we meld together into a larger self in some sense. The effervescent self. Yes. Anybody else? A few more minutes.
Susan and Devin recently had Friday night orations for organizing, a sing-along, and to bring people together. And I think the two of you are starting a group called, is it Orations for Organizing? But there was a sense. Oh, vocalize to organize. Sorry, I've been struggling for what the. Anyway, we had an evening of coming together, and there was that ebullience of being together. So I felt that right here couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I was thought of also including stories about, I talked about wars starting so early, but there's been protest against wars forever too. I was thinking, is it Lysistrata where they refuse sex? Yeah, to try to make the men stop warring. Yeah, not whoring, warring. Yes. Yeah. So I thought of including that, but I didn't want to include too much history. I can get off in it.
Your comment, I think you said something like, well, you all know our history. I honestly do not. I am learning now a lot more history of our nation, of our world than I ever learned as a young person. It just wasn't something I studied.
Yeah.
And it's really, it has really helped me have a perspective about these times that we're in and how I can respond to them, and understanding, this, like you said,
Nothing new.
it is nothing new. What's new is that we have access to the information
Yeah.
much more so than we ever have.
rarely.
And to our own detriment, I think, sometimes. But isn't it wonderful that we can listen to historians, that we can read about history and learn more, and educate ourselves more, so that we have,
For sure.
we can see the awe, so we don't get so distraught by what's happening on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking because I talked about 5,000 years ago, but that was just the first time that we have, actually it was mostly visual evidence where they sculpted these steles to show the battles, it wasn't even written at that time. But there's so much before that probably, that we just don't have history. Yeah, the Petroglyphs too.
Along the line of educating ourselves about history, I've just come across a new podcast series called Inheritance, and it's a multi-part interview series or stories of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and their journeys of coming to this country, and how their parents came to this country, and the impact that it's had on living here. And I think it's going to be just a wonderful series. And like Susan, there's so much that I don't know about the history of our country and how we've arrived at this place. And if we don't know history, we're bound to repeat it. So it's good to learn.
Yeah, I, had been teaching probably 10 years or so, and my office mate taught the art history classes, and he was dying, and he asked me to teach the art history, and I said, well, we came up with this plan, me and this other guy, that I'd teach the modern and he'd teach the ancient, and this guy who was dying said, no, I want you to teach it all, and it had been like 20 years, 30 years since I'd taken art history, and it also was taught really differently. It was mostly taught to me like dates and times and places and that kind of stuff. And this guy taught it from the point of contextual, like how does it come out of the society, or how, and why is the art, how does it reflect the society? So I did a tremendous amount of studying, believe me, your teachers do more studying than the students do, and it would really open my eyes to teach the ancient, because it's the whole formation of who we are, how we organize ourselves in civilizations. And, I almost mentioned this, but there's this great article, it was written back in the 70s, that's something like the worst mistake that mankind ever made. And it talks about what life was like when they were tribal and what it became like when they settled down into civilizations, and how much worse it was, because that's where you get wars and diseases and all those kind of things. And you have to work, a lot of people work a lot to take care of the few, and that, that never happened in tribal as well. So, Yeah, sorry we're getting off in hard history, but yeah, you shouldn't open that door with me.
Well, I think it's very true that when we teach, we learn a lot, don't we?
We learn a lot, yeah.
And I went to a conference once on, it was a literary thing, and James Baldwin was there. And it was actually in France, and he was talking about the social problems existing in France because of North Africans coming to France. And of course, being a Black American, he was also referring to the United States. And he said, what you're experiencing now is the chickens coming home to roost. And I mean, if we look back at our history, we see that the history of the United States, at least, has been so fraught with horrible things, truly.
Yeah.
Most of what I know I've learned from literature. And I mean, in literature talks about everything. And so I sometimes think, I don't want to press this too hard because I think it's too awful, but that a lot of things we have now are symptoms. They're symptoms of what came before.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So talk about the shit that I was reminded of this. It was one of the Thai forest monks, Ajahn Chah or someone. He had this student who was always complaining. And he said he's like the person who's got his pocket is full of shit. And everywhere he goes, he says it stinks. and so it's like, he's carrying it with him. And so I think our country has just got a lot of manure, we can say.
Well, and we all do. I mean, that's the thing. We all have that pocket of shit,
That's our heritage.
Yeah. Oh, she has a question too.
I just have to say
We'll do
this.
you and then you. Okay.
Okay. Well, I should really go last. So there's two little boys and they go to a farm and there's a big barn and one little boy's an optimist, the other one's a pessimist. They run into the barn and the one little pessimist boy runs into the stall and he's like, oh, there's nothing in here but shit. There's just shit in the other little boy runs in there and he's throwing a shit in the air and he's like, with all this shit, there's gotta be a pony in here somewhere.
That's good.
Well, we've passed time, so I'll make this very quick. Thanks for the lovely talk, as always. But as you were talking, and as I was listening to everyone else's comment, what was coming to my mind was this basic thing that if there wasn't shit, we wouldn't appreciate the pearl. This is what life is. You gotta take it with bad and the good. And I think our challenges as people is always going to be how we are going to take that shit and turn it into a flower. That's our job as practitioners.
Yeah.
How do we get the mud of the life and turn it into a lotus?
Yeah.
And if we look at all the challenges of life as that, it makes it a lot more acceptable to go through it and to live with it. And when you look at the history of mankind, I was reading an article by Robert Reich, and somebody had asked him, well, you were around in the 60s. Is this as bad as, were the 60s as bad as what they are today? And he said they were worse. Because at that time, we thought we've lost everything. This country has just been totally upside down and there was no way of putting it right side up again. But now at least we know that we are all together looking not at fighting ourselves, but fighting for our liberty and our democracy. So those things, when we put them next to one another, really makes the bad things not so bad, palatable, livable. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I always really like talking to you guys.